welcome to the first episode of the PredictIt Weekly Markets podcast. I am your host, Jacob Studwell, and I'm here with prediction market savant, Garth Yuckham. Garth, how was your election week?
Hectic. I can't say it was surprising, but it was definitely hectic. Glad it's over, and let's turn the page to 2026.
I mean, I think what's funny is that not every election is wrapped up. You still have the Seattle mayoral race that's like a little bit of a toss-up. But I mean, generally, you're right. I mean, let's just turn the page. Let's start to look at 2026. We saw a 12-cent increase in Democrats' chances to win the House in 2026. It's now at 66 cents. Do you think that's an accurate price there? Are you interested in that buy? And then, I don't know, anything else you're looking for at 2026?
Well, I mean, history is a powerful tool to look at these types of things. Party in power, they usually lose seats in the midterms. The Biden economy is now the Trump economy. And it was an interesting story in the Wall Street Journal this morning talking about those who have money in the stock market think the economy is fantastic. Those who don't, not so much. So am I buying at 66? I'm probably selling. I think things are going to start coming down unless something crazy happens. I think the ceiling at the moment is maybe 70, 72. People bought it jumped after last Tuesday, but it's not. It'll only come down. Polling will get tighter. People will forget about things, and we'll move along until the spring, and then we can reassess.
I think that's fair. I mean, not to jump to the government shutdown, we will get to a full discussion of where we're at right now. We're recording on Monday morning. But I don't think, generally, if you look at government shutdowns and the effects on midterms or actual elections, it's pretty much none. People, like you said, people kind of just forget by the time we'll get to, the dog days of the summer when we're really charging forward. But I do think it's worth a look at 66 cents. But there probably will be a lot more going on.
Oh, yeah.
So there's no big good reason to jump in at that price. I'd probably wait until maybe there's some infighting on the Democratic side. Maybe the price falls a little bit and you can get in closer to 50 cents. I feel like anything that is this far away, you're really looking for that coin toss to get into the market. But it is interesting at 66 cents because I definitely feel that the theory that Donald Trump, when he is on the ballot, will overperform his polling averages and will overperform on the ballot. And then when he's not featured, they underperform. The Republicans pretty much lose across the board whenever he's not on the ballot. So if you're going by that, 66 cents is not a bad place to get into. If you really do think and you start doing the math and you start seeing, okay, actually, what states are in play for the Senate for Democrats as well? Because all this stuff will be highly correlated. Maybe you start to look at Maine or however you want to kind of slice and dice. Right. But the House, it's razor thin as it is. So why not?
It is razor thin, but at the same time, the map in 2026 is very pro-Republican. I think the first mile marker, and again, we don't want to get in the government shutdown just yet, but the polling in the government shutdown is talking about that it's the Republicans' fault and missing the fact that the Democrats have basically said no 14 times to the same thing. And so once the government shutdown is done and dusted, that next conversation about the ACA subsidies, Obamacare, how that conversation goes in the next couple weeks, months, I think it'll set the ground for the midterms. If the Republicans really botch it, I think the Democrats will hang it around their neck, and that'll become a major chord that they use in the midterm run-up. And then again, you have the issue that Trump's not technically on the ballot come next year. So I think that is your first mile marker you're going to be looking at is these discussions. It's part of what got the agreement as of last night, and how Thune plays that out, Senate Majority Leader in the next coming months, and how the Democrats do. I think that's going to be one good gauge for where this market might go in the months after, in the early parts of first 2 quarters of 2026.
Yeah, absolutely. So, the goal of this show, we're going to keep things really, really quick. We're going to chop things up, go through a lot of different issues. I do want to get a little bit larger and kind of talk about prediction markets in general. Because there's this sentiment that like prediction markets always get it right, like no matter what. But I think there's some misconception there. I mean, I guess they do always get it right in the end because trading is active and we
Right.
will always get result at some point, and the traders will flock to that result. But I do think it's a market. It's just like the stock market. It's all about timing, right? It's all about when are we getting
Yep.
into certain markets, just like we said. Are you getting in at 66 cents, or are you waiting until it falls down to 50, or maybe you want to get in at 85 cents or something like that. So
Right.
I do want to talk about when you look at prediction markets and how they valued two candidates in particular. If you look at Chitterelli in New Jersey, who lost the gubernatorial election to Mikey Sherrill, and then if you look at Cuomo in the mayoral race in New York City, they both actually had around the same price in prediction markets. Again, Mikey Sherrill had about an 85% chance of winning. Cuomo had, about 15 cents there. But if you look at the end result, Mikey Sherrill won by, I guess it's going to be 14 points, basically. Mamdani is probably going to win by about like 9 points. And you can see that 85 cents for Mikey Sherrill was probably under where people should have bought her. She's probably worth closer to 95 cents. Whereas Mamdani, not that he was ever in risk of losing. I mean, he cost about 90 cents as well. But they don't exactly flesh out to the exact polling results that you end up with. So yes, prediction markets are going to stay very, very accurate to the news and to the open information that exist, but they're not always 100% pricing everything accurately. So that's why I think it's all.
You hit the nail on the head at the end there. A prediction market's only as good as the amount of information that is available or that the traders have. It might not be fully, widely available, but maybe a handful of the traders will have it, and they will be able to drive the prices up or down based on this information. I think that the Mamdani race, New York in general, had lots of polling, lots of information flowing through it. So the price was going to be a little higher on Mamdani, or a little bit more bullish the traders could be. I think New Jersey was more spotty in its polling, the general sense of where that was going, and then the question of, well, will Murphy drag down the governor, taxes? How will people feel about that versus the very clear narratives of somebody like Cuomo and Mamdani. Mamdani, okay, sure, he's new, but he ran a good campaign. But everybody also knows Cuomo, right? And he's bringing a whole lot of baggage to a race like that. So yeah, I think the prediction markets are really only as good as the amount of information that is available. We see that quite often. But I think that when that information is flowing, like on election night, and people are checking the vote totals, and when there's 2% in, or this county has this, that county has that, you can instantly see the reactions that people who are following directly can really jump on it, and then you see the flow and the markets react in that way. And they can they just can react so quickly that's a huge value that they bring.
Yeah, I mean, I do want to also bring up prediction markets are not always lockstep with the polling information that we have. I mean, if you look at 2024, polling averages were 50-50 essentially for Kamala and Trump. And prediction markets pretty much always had Trump at between like 70 and 80 cents, something like that. And then, he went to like 90 plus cents really, really quickly in the night, basically with like exit polls or polling closing around the country. So it's not always that polling and prediction markets are going to be lockstep, and it's not always that the vibes are going to dictate what price is what. So it's just an interesting conversation. And again, we're talking about prediction markets consistently, so I did want to open up that conversation. We need to get to the government shutdown, but any last thoughts on prediction markets?
No, I mean I mean they're always evolving, and the type of information that people are bringing to each market will help the markets be more efficient. And bigger the race, we would hope that there'd be more volume and more efficiency in the pricing. That's just something to always consider. And the races where there's a lot less information, you'll have to build that into your strategy and how you are predicting that market or that
Yeah.
contract.
Absolutely. All right, we're moving to government shutdown. Big developments late last night. They passed a procedural hurdle, 60-40. I mean, it couldn't have been closer, to get to the point where they can vote on a continuing resolution. Things will get to the House now. If we're looking at the market itself, things have really zoomed in on one particular or two particular contracts. Is that accurate?
Yeah, that's a good way to say it. Basically, everybody's expecting starting tomorrow through this week, we'll have liftoff, and the government shutdown should be finished. There are a lot of interesting elements to this equation. 60-40, as you said, but the 8 centrist Democrats that walked across the aisle to say yes, okay, we're going to move on. Not a single one of them is up for re-election, and even one is retiring. So I think they had a lot of leeway, and I think that you're seeing a little bit of Capitol Hill, Congress, Washington actually working together to move this on. We've hit a couple of milestones. Last week, this became the longest ever shutdown in history, U.S. history, beating the last one, well, the last real one, with Donald Trump trying to get funding for the wall. And, they basically got a handshake agreement. And with all the flight cancellations, the concerns over air traffic controllers, the Thanksgiving holidays coming up, the busy period that this is, it's time to move on and then have a real conversation about healthcare subsidies.
Yeah, so I flew this past weekend. The vibes I was in Newark Airport. They were pretty low, I will say. I think a lot of travelers didn't even make it to the airport because their flight was already canceled. But I
Right.
heard on the loudspeaker multiple delays and cancellations. Definitely not amazing, and we know that stuff that affects Americans directly and affects pretty much all Americans. I mean, I don't know what the percentage of Americans, flying on any given week is, but it might be even higher than those who have like Obamacare and rely on those subsidies. So that's
Right.
why I think it's probably more important. But if we do look at the pricing for basically the shutdown ending, or we should say Trump signing a bill to end the shutdown, it's 40 cents for 11/11 to 11/13, and then it's 39 cents for 11/14 to 11/16. Basically, just giving it an even chance to end in the next 3 days, or a couple days after that. You think maybe there's a chance it goes a little longer? Are you interested in 17 to 19 or a 20 or later at 8 cents?
I think what's really interesting is that, well, one, I'm up way before everybody else here. And this market has shifted since I've last looked at it. And I think everybody's waking up, no pun intended, to the very real possibilities of, A, how are we going to get everybody back to Washington? Because we haven't ended the shutdown and we are still having limitations on our travel capabilities. And the fact that an agreement was made yesterday, and the Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, saying, okay, I'll give my people 48 hours to return. You've got to remember that the House has been out on recess for 7 weeks. September 19th. That's crazy. And yeah, there are some potential procedural hiccups. As you said, that they passed the continuing resolution from the House. They're going to now have to do some steps to put in the spending bills, and there are going to be certain procedures for that may or may not go smoothly. Rand Paul is on the record as of Thursday saying that he's going to make it as painful as possible.
As he does, by the way.
As he
Rand
does,
Paul
as he
specializes
normally does,
in
as he
making
normally
it
does.
as painful as possible. We
But
will.
language, the hemp policy in Kentucky is an interesting one because it pits McConnell versus Paul. And Paul is worried that they're going to destroy an entire industry based on the language. So how hard does he fight for that? Is it a bluff? Is it not a bluff? There are some very real possibilities here, and we haven't even talked about House coming and having to vote on this.
Right.
The Republicans have to get all their ducks in a row. The Democrats use the national television on Sunday, Meet the Press, to sit there and say, hey, we're going to fight this tooth and nail. There are no agreements here. It's a handshake deal. We're going to have a conversation about the Obamacare subsidies, which end at the end of the year. And, are we going to take the Republicans' word for it? Chuck Schumer got burned in the spring over that. And so are we going to have a repeat? And will the Republicans get everybody in the building, and will they agree? Will they like with the 3 spending bills and what's in them, which has helped move this process forward? So I think there's a lot of opportunities. I think it should be interesting in the next couple of hours to see how the markets react. 11 to 13 is down 15 cents in the last hour.
Right.
It's 10 a.m.
People starting to realize that, oh, wait, people actually have to vote on this. This actually has to get to Trump's desk.
Exactly.
There's so many different pieces. This is like political wonk central. Like, if you are a political wonk, if you're listening to this is your time to shine. Like, jump in these markets. I think maybe if you worked on the Hill, or if you have any understanding of how Congress works, this is your time to jump in and say, this isn't going to happen for those two, 40-cent markets. Let's jump on those later 8-cent markets. It's a long shot, but I think it's worth it. Here, early bird gets the worm. If you wake up early, you have a better opportunity to jump in these markets than if you're late to the party. Again, it's all about market timing. Not that I'm telling you to wake up at 4 a.m. or whenever Garth wakes up the other side of the world. But I definitely think this is like a really good lesson to say, things change really quickly in these markets, and if you actually can get to them sooner rather than later, you can make some money. That you can make some money.
We joke that the markets don't sleep, but in this case, Congress didn't sleep, and the Senate was in session all weekend. So a lot has been happening. There's been a lot of conversations. They've been in the basement, talking it up, making agreements, and now the world will pay attention to what actually these agreements are, and start filtering through the page after page after page. Is there something that they don't want to hold on to? And then they have to weigh that, right? Of course, they have to weigh it against the fact that we've been shut down for 40 days. And, there's a lot of pain.
Yeah. Feeding people, feeding their dogs, getting people to their destinations on time. I know those don't sound
exactly,
but they affect
keeping the skies safe. It's a lot of factors involved here. So
100%. All right, let's just shout out one new market on PredictIt. So, will Mike Johnson remain the Speaker of the House through the 190th Congress, which is all of next year, essentially? Are there any early calls against Mike Johnson? I saw Marjorie Taylor Greene go on a crazy press tour recently. There are rumors that this is like a revenge tour because Trump doesn't want her to run for Senate in Georgia, but besides the rumors, are there other calls for Mike Johnson's job? It's the most fraught job in politics, but what do you think?
I think it's too early to tell. I think he's well positioned at the moment. He really, excuse my French, hasn't pissed anybody off too much recently. I don't think he's seeing a lot of blowback from last week's elections yet, at least. The focus has been very much so on the Senate and getting the shutdown open. As I said, they've been in recess for 7 weeks. We have another market about the Epstein files, and will the House make a vote by 11/21? This is effectively a market asking, will the House get back to business?
Yeah.
And then once the House gets back to business, what are the priorities going to be?
And will they swear in Grijalva, by the way? Grijalva is the
well, exactly.
Won a special election, her late father, seat that she won. Grijalva wants to vote on the Epstein files. They have not sworn in. Mike Johnson has said we will not swear in Grijalva until we get back to business and the government is back on.
Exactly.
So this is an underlying market about that swear-in. It doesn't seem like the pressure's ratcheting up more than it was a couple weeks ago, but that's definitely an interesting one in terms of timing and who's going to be sworn in and when the government's going to get back on. So if you don't want to jump in the timing game with the government shutdown, you can jump in to the Epstein files. That's until November 31st is that market, I think.
November 21st. So
21st.
it's a little shorter period of time, but I think it's got it'll be interesting. And I think getting back to the Speaker Johnson, I mean, at 90 cents, I mean, while in a perfect bubble vacuum, that sounds like a nice price, but I think I could see Yes going down quite considerably over the coming months. You got to remember that market is going to run for quite a while, and I think there will be enough turmoil that 90 cents seems a little high at the moment. Even if you really, remove some of the drama from it, you think he should keep the job. He hasn't done anything really too egregious, but we all know that the House is the House, and well, somebody will start screaming soon, and we will. Yeah, I could see his price dropping, and
So you like it at 10 cents. You like the no at 10
yeah,
cents.
yeah.
All right.
I think that's got probably 10 to 20 cents growth on it in the coming months.
Yeah, that's good
it's
stuff.
always a crisis.
I'm gonna call that your pick of the week. And I'm gonna shout out. I like November 20th or later for Trump to sign a bill to or end the government shutdown. I really love things are gonna blow up. It's not all sunshines and daisies in the Senate, and especially not in the House. You saw calls from so many different representatives, Senate candidates next year saying we need to continue the shutdown until we actually extend the subsidies, because that's just not a part of this agreement. So I really like this to go a lot longer, sadly, just because there's so many people to please and so many different things to do. So my pick is going to be past 11:20.
I mean, if you look at that contract, I mean, it's already up 5 cents this morning. It closed down at 3 cents this morning, or last night, effectively. So yeah, I mean, why not? A little bit of volatility, and that could easily be back up in the mid-20s, or depending on how big the blow-up is, or so on and so forth.
Yeah. And by the way, since we've been talking, the November 11th to November 16th has already grown 10 cents since I
There
last.
you go. There you go.
51 cents. So again, these things change really, really quickly. Happy hunting for everyone who's looking at these contracts. Garth, anything else you want to shout out before we get out of here?
No, I think I'm good. I think the focus is going to be shut down, getting the House back in action. That's going to be the real focus for the coming week, 2 weeks, to get us to Thanksgiving, I think.
Yeah. All right. I love it. Thanks, everyone, for listening to the PredictIt Weekly Markets podcast. I am your host, Jacob Studwell. I'm here with Garth Yuckham, and we'll see you next week.
Thank you.
All right. I can put in the music later. I don't know why this episode, the music, it's got to figure it out.
I like the music. I thought it was kind of jaunty.